Grayson Holt was at that point in his life when a Fulton County judge handed his wife the house he had built with his own hands and handed him a modest settlement check. He walked out of that courtroom with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and a reliable sedan he would sleep in for the next few nights. Vanessa had not just left the marriage. She had spent a considerable time quietly restructuring their joint accounts, erasing his financial footprint from the home he had renovated room by room, and positioning herself for a life she had already chosen with someone else. She left that courthouse believing she had taken everything he had. She was right about the house. She was wrong about the man. Years later, Grayson's face appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine, and in the hours that followed, Vanessa called his phone repeatedly. He did not answer once. What he did instead would cost her everything she thought she had won. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The kitchen smelled like coffee and the last quiet hour of the morning. Grayson Holt had been up since before dawn, not because he had to be. His shift at Meridian Logistics did not start until later, but because this was how he was built. Early, steady, ahead of the thing, before it became a problem. He sat at the kitchen table in a gray t-shirt and joggers, his laptop open, a yellow legal pad beside it, with 3 neat columns of numbers: mortgage, utilities, car insurance, HOA fee. He moved through each line with the same focus he brought to everything: quiet, precise, nothing wasted. A mug of black coffee sat at his elbow, still steaming. This was Grayson Holt. Not flashy, not loud, just a man who handled what needed handling before anyone thought to ask. The house around him was proof of that. 4 bedrooms in a southwest Atlanta neighborhood that had been coming up slowly for years. He had bought it with Vanessa years ago when the bones were good and the price reflected the work it needed. He had done most of that work himself. The kitchen backsplash, dark slate tile laid by hand on a cold October Saturday while Vanessa slept in. He had watched 4 YouTube tutorials the morning before he started it, sitting in this same chair to make sure he got it right. The back deck, the crown molding in the hallway, the expanded bedroom closet he built over a long July weekend working in the Georgia heat with the door open and a box fan blowing warm air across his back. A contractor had quoted them thousands for that closet. Grayson had done it for a fraction of the cost and a sore back. He never complained about any of it. That was not in him. He saw something that needed doing, and he did it. Simple as that. He pulled up the household budget spreadsheet and cross-referenced it against the legal pad. Everything lined up. It always lined up when Grayson was the one looking at it. He heard the bedroom door open down the hall. Soft footsteps. Then Vanessa appeared in the kitchen doorway wrapped in her silk robe, hair pulled back, already looking composed in the way she always managed to look composed even at that early hour. "You are up early," she said, not a question. "Wanted to run the numbers before the week starts." She moved to the coffee maker and poured herself a mug. "We are fine, Grayson. I went through everything last week." "I know," he said. "I just like to see it myself." She glanced at the legal pad the way she sometimes glanced at things he was working on. A quick look. Not dismissive exactly, but not interested either. Then she turned toward the window and watched the yard. "I have been thinking about the Meridian situation," Grayson said. He kept his voice easy. "Martinez over in the southeast region told me recently that half the independent carriers they work with are bleeding money on routing inefficiencies. Basic stuff. The kind of thing the big companies fixed long ago, but nobody has built a clean solution for the mid-size guys." Vanessa sipped her coffee. "I have had an idea for some time now," Grayson continued. "Route optimization software built specifically for regional carriers. It would not take much to—" "Did you call the HOA about the fence panel?" Vanessa asked. She was still looking at the window. Grayson stopped. He looked at her for a moment. "Not yet. They are going to cite us if we wait much longer. You know how they are. I will call today." She nodded and moved toward the hallway. "Do not forget you have dinner with Vance Thursday. I already told him you would bring the drinks." And that was that. The idea, years of quiet thinking, years of mental blueprints drawn in the margins of his actual life, folded back into his pocket without a fight, the way it always did. He turned back to his laptop. He thought about the promotion. Years earlier, his supervisor at Meridian had offered him the regional director role, a position that would have tripled his salary and put him on a path that felt for the first time in his career like it matched his actual capacity. He had been ready for it. He had known it then and he knew it now. But Vanessa had said they were not ready to relocate. She had said it gently, reasonably, with that particular tone she used when she wanted a conversation to be over. "We are finally settled here, Grayson. We just got the house. Let us not uproot everything for a title." He had let it go. He had trusted her read on it, the way he trusted her read on most things. That was what you did. You built the life together. You made the calls together. He clicked over to the shared banking app to schedule a transfer for the water bill. The screen loaded. He stared at it. He clicked refresh. The number did not change. He set his coffee down slowly and leaned forward. The joint savings account, the one they had been building for years, the one he deposited half his paycheck into every 2 weeks without fail, showed a balance far lower than it should have. Grayson did not move for a long time. The screen glowed in the early morning quiet. He read the number again the way you read something you do not understand, slowly, like a second pass might change it. It did not change. He clicked to the transaction history. The list loaded, and he scrolled through it. And the further back he scrolled, the colder the feeling in his chest became. Not panic, not yet. Something more precise than panic. The specific sensation of a man who was very good at reading numbers, watching numbers, tell him something he cannot explain. He got up. He walked to the hallway and stood there for a moment listening. Down the hall, behind the closed bedroom door, nothing moved. He went back to the table. He opened every account he had access to. Checking, savings, the emergency fund they had set up years ago when the water heater went out and they swore they would never be caught short again. He cross-referenced the dates. He pulled up his last several pay stubs from the Meridian employee portal and lined the deposit amounts against the account activity. That was when he found it. His direct deposit had been quietly unlinked from the joint savings account in a single transaction update, a change to the routing structure that he had never seen, never signed off on, and would not have noticed unless he was looking at the account the way he was looking at it right now in the kitchen of the house he had built with his own hands. His paycheck had been going into the joint checking account. Normal, routine. But the automatic transfer that used to pull a significant amount out of every deposit and push it into savings, that transfer had been altered. The amount had been dropped dramatically, while the balance bled out through withdrawals he could not immediately trace because Vanessa handled the account login. He did not have full visibility, and he sat back. He thought about the last stretch of their marriage, thought about all the times he had asked about the savings, and Vanessa had said, "We are building. It is steady. I will send you the update this weekend." And he had nodded and trusted her because that was the arrangement. She was organized. She managed the accounts. He focused on the house, on work, on making sure the life ran the way it was supposed to run. He had trusted her. He picked up his phone. He photographed every screen, the transaction history, the account structure page, the routing change, the withdrawal dates. Then he opened his laptop, forwarded everything he could access to an email address he created right there with his coffee gone cold beside him. He worked quietly for some time. When he was done, he closed the laptop and set it exactly where it had been. He washed his mug. He straightened the legal pad. He went to work. The next few days, he was the same man he always was. He came home on time. He fixed a loose hinge on the back gate that had been bugging him for a week. He had dinner with Vanessa one evening. She made salmon, talked about a closing at work, asked him something about Vance, and he answered everything normally, cleanly, without a tremor in his voice. But at night, when the house was quiet, he thought. He thought about the promotion. He thought about calling it a family decision when he never actually made the decision, when Vanessa had made it for him, and he had accepted her reasoning, like a man who did not realize his ceiling had a hand on it. He thought about every business conversation she had redirected, every time he had brought up the logistics idea and she had changed the subject so smoothly that he almost believed he had chosen to let it go. He thought about how she always had the account logins, how she had set them up when they first moved in together, back when she was the one with the corporate paralegal job and he was mid-level, and it made sense for her to be the organized one. He had never questioned the arrangement because she had always framed it as competence, not control. The difference between those two things was the entire story of their marriage. On the morning of the third day, he got dressed, drove to Meridian, and worked a full shift. He came home in his work clothes, gray Meridian polo, khakis, boots, and found the envelope tucked between the storm door and the frame. A white legal envelope, his name printed on the front. He stood in the doorway and opened it. He read it once, then he read it again. Petition for dissolution of marriage, filed while he was sitting at the same kitchen table photographing bank statements in the dark. He stood there in the cooling afternoon air, holding the papers, and something settled over him. Not surprise, not grief, not the hot, bright feeling he might have expected, just clarity, flat and total and cold. This was never a collapse. This was a plan. The courtroom smelled like carpet cleaner and something older underneath it. Something that had been absorbing bad news for decades and never quite aired out. Grayson sat at the table on the left side. Vanessa sat at the table on the right. Years of marriage, and they were feet apart, facing the same direction, which was somehow the loneliest arrangement he had ever been in. He had not looked at her directly since he sat down. The judge was a trim man in his late 50s named Honorable Carl Bryce. He had the face of someone who had seen every version of this particular story and was no longer moved by any of them. He read from the documents in front of him with the flat efficiency of a man who had somewhere else to be. Vanessa's attorney was a woman named Hargrove, sharp gray suit, a leather portfolio that probably cost more than Grayson's monthly car note. She stood when she spoke, and she spoke like someone who had rehearsed every word twice before breakfast. Grayson's attorney was a public advocate named Marcus. He was not bad, he was simply outgunned, and he knew it. And Grayson had known it since their first meeting weeks earlier, when Marcus shuffled through his notes with the careful movements of a man working multiple cases at once. "Your Honor," Hargrove said, her voice smooth and unhurried. The documentation before the court clearly reflects that mortgage payments on the marital property were drawn exclusively from the restructured joint savings account for the preceding period. My client made disproportionate and consistent financial contributions to the property's current market value, both through those payments and through her professional management of the household accounts. Grayson kept his eyes forward. Professional management. That was what they were calling it. Hargrove continued. She cited figures. She cited dates. She presented a clean, tight narrative about a woman who had carried the financial weight of a home while her husband's contributions had become, in the documented record, minimal. She did not say he did not contribute. She did not have to. The account history said it for her, because the account history had been shaped for a long time to say exactly that. Marcus objected twice. Judge Bryce noted the objections and moved on. The house was awarded to Vanessa. Grayson heard the words. He registered them the way you register something you already knew was coming, not with shock, but with the dull, heavy recognition of a thing finally landing that has been falling for a long time. The 4-bedroom house in southwest Atlanta. The kitchen backsplash he laid by hand on a Saturday years earlier, watching YouTube tutorials before Vanessa woke up. The back deck he rebuilt over weekends in the July heat because the contractor quoted thousands, and Grayson could not see the sense in paying someone else to do work he knew how to do. The bedroom closet he opened up so she would have room for the clothes she kept buying. All of it gone. Awarded, on paper, to the woman who managed the accounts. The settlement check was cut for a modest amount. His share of what remained in the joint savings after Vanessa's attorneys argued her disproportionate contribution to the balance. Marcus placed it on the table in front of him without a word. Grayson picked it up. He looked at it. Then he folded it once and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say to a room like this. A room that had already made its decision based on paperwork that had been arranged carefully and deliberately to tell a story where he was a minor character in his own marriage. He stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He walked out. The sedan had 2 suitcases in the trunk, his laptop bag on the passenger seat, and his tool bag in the back seat. He had packed them days earlier. He had not told Vance this or anyone. He drove without a direction for a while through neighborhoods he knew. Past streets he had driven countless times, past the exit that would have taken him toward the house that was no longer his. He did not take that exit. Later that evening, he pulled into the lot behind a Kroger on Cascade Road and parked near the back, away from the lights at the entrance. He turned off the engine. He sat in the quiet. He could call Vance. He knew that. Vance would answer on the first ring. Vance would have the room ready before Grayson finished explaining. That was who his brother was. But he could not do it yet, not that night. That night, he was too raw, too close to the surface of it. And the thought of someone seeing him like this, even Vance, especially Vance, sat wrong in a way he did not have words for. He needed to feel the full weight of this before he let anyone else near it. So he reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go. He stared at the ceiling of the car. The parking lot lights threw a sickly orange glow through the windshield that made everything look slightly wrong, slightly unreal, like a photograph taken under bad conditions. He lay there and let the quiet be what it was. Then he reached to the passenger seat. He pulled his laptop onto his chest. He opened it. The screen light was sharp in the dark car. He opened a blank document. At the top, he typed 2 words, Forge Path Solutions. He stared at them for a long moment. Then he started to write. Grayson woke up wrong. His neck had locked and his lower back had opinions about the driver's seat that he did not have the energy to argue with. The orange parking lot glow had faded into the gray-pink light of early morning. A garbage truck was working its way through the strip mall at the far end of the lot, its hydraulics groaning in the quiet. He sat up slowly, rolled his neck until something released, looked at the clock on his phone. He set the phone down, pulled his laptop off the passenger seat, and checked what he had written the night before. Pages of rough framework, route optimization for small regional carriers, the kind of companies that ran a handful of trucks and got eaten alive by inefficiencies that a Fortune 500 operation would fix without anyone noticing. He read through it. It was rough. It was also real. He closed the laptop. He drove to the 24-hour gym on Campbellton. The locker room was mostly empty at that hour. One older man with a towel over his shoulder heading toward the showers, not making eye contact with anyone, which suited Grayson fine. He found an open locker, pulled clean clothes from the duffel he kept on the back seat for exactly this, and stood under the hot shower for longer than necessary. He let himself have that much. Then he dressed. He looked at himself in the long mirror above the row of sinks. He looked like a man who had slept in a car, if you knew what to look for. If you did not know, he looked like a man who had woken up early and gotten to it. He pulled out his phone, found Vance's name. Vance picked up on the first ring. He always did. I need a few weeks, Grayson said. There was a short pause, not hesitation, just Vance registering the weight of the words. Room is ready, Vance said. Not what happened. Not are you okay. Just the room is ready. Grayson stood in the gym locker room and held his phone against his ear and felt something in his chest loosen by one notch. I will be there tonight, Grayson said. Vance lived in a brick ranch house in East Point that he had bought years ago and slowly improved with his own hands, the way brothers from the same mother tend to do things the same way without discussing it. The spare room was small and smelled like fresh linen. There was a lamp and a dresser and enough space for a man to think. They fell into a rhythm without negotiating it. Vance cooked most nights. Nothing fancy, just real food, the kind that came from a pot on the stove. They ate at the kitchen table. They talked about work, about Vance's current contracting job, about the Braves, about things that required no weight. Vanessa's name almost never came up, and when it did, it was only in passing, like a weather event that had already moved through. Grayson was grateful for that, more than he ever said. But the nights were a different thing. He lay in the dark of the spare room, and the marriage came apart in his hands, whether he wanted it to or not. Not the drama of it. The divorce. The courtroom. The check. The quieter stuff. The small, consistent architecture of how their years together had actually gone. There was the promotion, regional director, years into the marriage, a jump that would have tripled his income and put him on a track he could feel in his bones was right. He had told Vanessa about it over dinner, and she had said, "We are not ready to relocate, Grayson. We have just gotten stable here." And he had heard the word "we" and let it stand. He found out later from a coworker at a company happy hour that Vanessa had called his supervisor's office directly, described the opportunity as a family situation. The supervisor had assumed Grayson was declining. Grayson had never been asked. He lay there and thought about that, let himself think about it plainly without softening it. Then there were the business ideas. ForgePath was not the first time that concept had lived in him. He brought a version of it to Vanessa twice. Both times she had listened carefully, nodded thoughtfully, and then walked him through every reason the timing was wrong, every risk they could not afford, every way it made more sense to wait. She was never cruel about it. She was never dismissive. She was reasonable in a tone that closed doors so quietly you did not notice the latch catching. He thought about that too. He thought about how many times he had made himself smaller because she always had a reason that smaller was safer, and how, for a long time, he had called that love. Weeks later, he told Vance he was leaving. Vance put down his fork. "You do not have to do that." "I know." "Then why?" Grayson looked at his plate for a moment. "Because I cannot rebuild here," he said. "It is not you. It is the feeling of being held. I need to be the one holding." Vance looked at him for a long moment. He did not argue further. That was another thing about his brother. He knew when a decision had already been made. He helped Grayson carry his bags to the sedan in the morning without a word. It was not the same as the first night in the Kroger parking lot. That night had been shock. This was a choice. Grayson knew the difference, and the difference mattered more than he could easily explain. He picked up an overnight cleaning shift at a commercial office facility on the south side, nights a week, out by early morning, decent hourly rate for quiet work that left his mind free. He showered at the gym. He ate at a 24-hour diner on Campbellton Road, where the coffee was strong and the counter staff learned his order without being asked. He worked on ForgePath solutions in every spare hour: parking lots, library, Wi-Fi zones, the diner table in the back corner near the window. That was his life for months. It was hard in the way that purposeful things are hard, which is a different kind of hard from the kind that just grinds you down. He was at the diner late one night, the framework open on his laptop, a cup of coffee going cold at his elbow. He was deep in the carrier pricing model, working through the logic of how a small operation could reduce deadhead miles significantly with the right dispatch optimization. He did not notice the woman at first. She was sitting across the diner at a two-top near the window, early 50s maybe, natural hair, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She had a dense stack of documents in front of her, the kind with tabs and margin notes, and she was working through them with a red pen, deliberate and unhurried. A cup of black coffee sat beside her, untouched. She looked up from her documents. She looked at his screen. Then she looked at him. "What are you building?" she asked. Grayson looked up from his screen. The woman was still watching him, not rudely, just with the particular focus of someone who had learned to identify things worth paying attention to. "Route optimization," he said, "for small regional carriers." She pulled her reading glasses down from her forehead. "How small?" "A handful of trucks. The operators who are too big to run on instinct but too small to afford enterprise dispatch software. They are losing a significant portion of their margin to inefficiency every quarter, and most of them do not even know the exact number." She nodded once, not impressed. "Processing. What is your data source for the route modeling?" "Right now, it is a hybrid, public traffic data combined with carrier-reported delivery logs. I am building a proprietary input layer so the system learns from each operator's specific run patterns over time." "And your monetization model?" "Subscription tiered by fleet size, low enough that it undercuts what they are currently losing, high enough to build real revenue at scale." She looked at him for a moment. "Who is your first target customer?" Grayson opened his mouth to answer and then stopped. He sat back slightly. He had just answered 3 questions without once thinking about whether he should. She had walked him directly into a pitch, and he had not even felt the door open. She smiled just slightly. "Sit tight," she said. She picked up her coffee, found it cold, and raised 2 fingers toward the counter without looking. The waitress came by and refilled both their cups without being asked. "Nadia Torres," she said, extending her hand across the space between their tables. "Grayson Holt." "Tell me the rest of it, Grayson." They talked for hours. Nadia Torres, it turned out, had spent years as a corporate litigator at a firm in Midtown Atlanta before walking away from it, the way people walk away from things that have taken everything they were willing to give. She had pivoted to small business consulting and angel investment years ago, several businesses back, most profitable. She spoke about her failures the same way she spoke about her successes, as data, as information, as things that had taught her what she now knew. She asked hard questions, and she let the silence after each one do its work. She did not fill space the way people do when they are more interested in sounding sharp than in hearing the answer. Grayson answered everything. He had been living inside this framework for months in parking lots and libraries and the back corner of this diner. And he knew it, the way you know something you have built with your own hands in the dark. When she poked at this pricing model, he had a response. When she challenged his assumption about carrier adoption rates, he acknowledged the gap and told her exactly how he planned to close it. At one point, she set her pen down and just looked at him. "You have been working on this alone," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." "How long?" "Months." She looked at him steadily. Something in her expression shifted. Not pity. Nothing close to it. More like the particular focus of someone recalibrating. "The problem is real," she said. "The market is underserved. Your instinct on the pricing tier is correct, and I will tell you why in a minute." She paused. "How tight is your deck?" "It needs work." "Call me when it does not." She reached into the leather folder beside her stack of documents and pulled out a business card. White, clean, no logo, just her name, a phone number, and the words Torres Advisory in small print. Grayson took the card. He looked at it for a moment. "Why?" he asked. She tilted her head. "You do not know me," he said. "You do not know anything about my background. Why would you give me your card?" Nadia picked up her red pen and tapped it once against the stack of documents. "I have been doing this for years," she said. "I have a good sense of what I'm looking at." She stood, gathering her papers with the efficiency of someone who did not waste motion. "The deck, Grayson. Call me when it is tight." She left money on the table and walked out into the dark. He called her days later. The deck was tight. What followed was not easy. Nothing worth having ever arrived easy. And Grayson had long since made peace with that particular truth. But things moved. For the first time in longer than he could name, things actually moved. Nadia sharpened his pitch over weeks of sessions at her office in Buckhead, a clean, spare space that smelled like coffee and focus. She connected him to his first 2 carrier clients through her own network, a regional outfit in Macon running trucks and a smaller operation out of Columbus that had been hemorrhaging money on deadhead runs for years and knew it. Both signed service agreements. Both saw measurable improvement within months. She invested enough to get ForgePath Solutions off the ground. In exchange, she took a small equity stake. Grayson kept the majority. He worked like a man who understood exactly what the alternative looked like. Long days were the short ones. He moved out of the sedan and into a studio apartment. Nothing fancy, just walls and a door that locked. He hired his first contractor, then his second. He ate real meals again and stopped noticing that he had stopped noticing hunger. The first year, several carrier contracts. The next year, more. Revenue grew steadily. Nadia was installed as general counsel and held her stake like the quiet, foundational thing it was. Grayson moved out of the apartment and into a house. His house. Ground that had only ever been his. He was older now. The conference room on an upper floor had glass walls and a long table and a view of the Atlanta skyline that never fully lost its effect on him, no matter how many mornings he walked into it. He sat across from Nadia, quarterly numbers spread between them, carrier acquisition cost trending down, retention high, the funding timeline firming up ahead of schedule. Nadia was making a note in the margin of the projection report when his phone buzzed against the table, a text from his publicist. He almost let it sit. Then he read it. "Forbes just dropped. New South 40 under 40. Grayson, you are on the spread." He set the phone down. He looked at the table for a moment. Nadia glanced up from her notes. "What is it?" Grayson turned the phone toward her. Nadia read the text. She set it back down on the table without a word. Then she smiled. It was not a big smile. It was the kind that comes from being right about something for a long time and finally getting to watch it land. She closed her notes, stood up, and walked to the small credenza along the wall where the coffee maker lived. "How do you want it?" she asked, same as always. She poured 2 cups. She brought them back to the table and sat down. She did not say congratulations or I told you so or anything else that would have made the moment smaller than it was. She just slid his cup across to him and picked up her own. Grayson pulled the Forbes app up on his phone. The feature loaded slowly the way things do when they matter. "Oh, Miss Toy." The photograph came first. Him in a charcoal blazer standing in front of the open office floor with the Atlanta skyline filling the windows behind him. He looked like a man with somewhere to be. He read the headline. Grayson Holt, founder and CEO, ForgePath Solutions, on rebuilding logistics from the ground up. He read the whole thing, every paragraph. He read it the way you read something that contains your own name in a context you spent years building toward in parking lots and late-night diners and cleaning shifts that left his hands smelling like industrial solvent until the next day. He read it carefully because it deserved that. When he was done, he set the phone face down on the table. He picked up his coffee. He said nothing. Nadia said nothing either. That was one of the things he valued most about her. Across Atlanta, on the other side of a city that had no idea any of this was happening, Vanessa Fontaine was standing in a Barnes & Noble with her friend when she turned toward the register display rack and stopped. The magazine was right there, eye level, glossy, and bright. She saw the photograph before she registered the name. A man in a charcoal blazer, familiar jaw, familiar stillness in the posture. That particular way he stood when he was completely certain of something. She picked it up. She read the name. She stood there for a long moment. Her friend was still talking. Vanessa did not hear a word of it. She was looking at the photograph and reading the caption and then reading the pull quote in the middle of the spread. We were solving a problem the industry did not know how to price. We just had to get there before someone else did. And something moved through her that she could not name quickly enough to stop. She put the magazine back on the rack. Then she took it with her to the register and bought it. She called Grayson's number later that afternoon. Grayson was in a meeting with two of his senior developers when his phone screen lit up face down on the table beside his notes. He turned it over once, just enough to see the name, Vanessa Fontaine. He looked at it for exactly as long as it took to understand what it meant. Then he turned the phone back over. Sorry, he said to the room. You were saying... The developer on his left continued talking. Grayson listened. He asked two questions. He made a note in the margin of his page. The meeting ran longer, and he was present for all of it. She called again while he was walking back to his office. He let it ring. She called again before he reached his desk. He sat down, opened his email, and responded to messages that had been waiting. By the time he drove home that evening, she had called many times. By midnight, more. By the following morning, when he pulled into the parking garage and rode the elevator up with a coffee from the place on the corner, his phone showed a number that made him stop in the elevator doorway for just a moment. Numerous missed calls, not one voicemail. Nadia was already at the table when he walked in. She had her own coffee and her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and her laptop open to something she was marking up with focused efficiency. Grayson sat down across from her. He set his phone on the table between them without saying anything. Nadia looked at the screen. She read the call log the way she read everything, straight through, no reaction, processing. She set it back down. What do you want to do? She asked. Grayson looked at the call log for a moment. He turned the phone face down. I want to know why she is calling, he said, not what she wants. He paused. Why she needs to. There is a difference. Nadia held her coffee with both hands and waited. Numerous calls, Grayson said. No voicemail. That is not someone who misses you. That is someone who needs something and cannot figure out how to ask for it. He set his coffee down. Pull up everything on Derek Voss. Nadia reached for her laptop. Grayson leaned back in his chair. His hands were loose in his lap. His face was calm and patient and completely still, the way he had learned to be, slowly and deliberately, in parking lots and diners and all the quiet hours when there was nothing left to do but think. The booth was in the back of a sandwich shop on Memorial Drive, a kind of place with laminate menus and a ceiling fan that worked too hard. Marcus Reed was already there when Grayson arrived. He was a compact man, mid-50s, with the particular stillness of someone who had spent a long career watching people before they knew they were being watched. He had a glass of water and a manila folder and no expression worth describing. He waited until Grayson sat down. Then he slid the folder across the table. Grayson opened it. He did not rush. He read each page the way he reviewed contracts, straight through, no skipping, no assumptions. The folder contained pages of source documentation, timestamps, photographs, financial records, and pages of sourced witness testimony from people who had seen Derek Voss and Vanessa Fontaine together in places that told their own story clearly enough. The timeline started well before Vanessa filed for divorce. Grayson turned a page. He kept reading. The investment properties were later in the folder, 2 parcels, one in East Atlanta and one in Douglasville, co-listed under a shell LLC called Fontaine Voss Property Group. The LLC had been formed months before Vanessa filed. The properties had been funded in part through cash transfers from the restructured joint savings account she had restructured, the same account that had been quietly drained of his direct deposit linkage long before he ever saw a divorce summons. Neither property had appeared in divorce discovery. Combined current value, hundreds of thousands. Grayson closed the folder. He set his hands flat on the table. He did not say anything for a moment. Outside, a truck rumbled past on Memorial Drive. The ceiling fan turned. A man 2 booths over laughed at something on his phone. "How clean is the paper trail on the LLC funding?" Grayson asked. "Clean enough," Marcus said. "The transfers are traceable. I have got bank records showing the movement in dates that align with the LLC formation. It is not buried. She just counted on it not being found." Grayson nodded slowly. "How long to trace the full LLC filing history? Every amendment, every asset attachment?" Marcus considered it. "A short time." "Take even less, Grayson said. Marcus picked up the folder. He stood, dropped money on the table for the water, and left without ceremony. Grayson watched him go. Then he picked up his coffee and stared at the window for a long time. The divorce was not a collapse. That was the thing he kept turning over. A collapse was something that happened to both people at once. Sudden, mutual, unplanned. What Vanessa had done was something else entirely. She had drawn a blueprint well in advance. She had moved money, formed an LLC, positioned assets, and filed paperwork. She had done it carefully and incrementally, in steps small enough that no single one looked like anything more than routine financial management. She had built a trap with years of foundation, and she had walked out of it clean. He had paid her the modest settlement with a check that sat in his glove compartment while he slept in a parking lot. He sat with that for a moment. He let it be exactly as ugly as it was. Then he left the money for his coffee and walked back to his car. Marcus delivered as agreed. The complete LLC filing history arrived in Grayson's email as a thick document with a summary at the front. Grayson read it twice. Then he forwarded the full package to Nadia, the LLC records, the financial trail, the relationship timeline, all of it. And she had it on Elena Vargas's desk within the hour. Elena Vargas was a financial fraud attorney who, according to Nadia, was the last person opposing counsel wanted to see across a conference table. She was precise and relentless and had built her practice on cases exactly like this one. Document intensive, long in the litigating, and satisfying in ways that other attorneys found too expensive to care about. She reviewed the full package quickly. Her assessment arrived in clear sentences. The LLC formation timeline, the transferred funds, the deliberate omission from divorce discovery, together, they constituted a viable civil claim for fraudulent concealment of marital assets she was prepared to file. Grayson said he needed a few more days. Elena said she would be ready when he was. Grayson did not move immediately. He waited. He continued running ForgePath. He reviewed carrier contracts and sat in product meetings and signed off on a hiring decision that had been pending. He let the information sit in him the way concrete sets, quietly, under pressure, until it was load-bearing. He was days into waiting when Vance called. "She reached out to Mama," Vance said. "No preamble, just that." Grayson was quiet. "She asked Mama to help smooth things over with you. Said she just wants to talk." The ceiling fan in Grayson's office turned at exactly the right speed and made no sound at all. "Okay," Grayson said. "Thanks for telling me." He hung up and called his mother. Vivian picked up on the second ring. "Do not," Grayson said. A pause, warm and knowing. "Baby," Vivian said. "I already know." Another pause. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Marcus's final report arrived on a Wednesday. No meeting this time. Just a secure email with a single attachment and a subject line that read, "Voss Final." Grayson opened it at his desk before anyone else arrived at the office. The summary was detailed. Derek Voss's development firm, Voss Group LLC, incorporated years earlier, had been over-leveraged for some time. 2 projects were in formal default, a mixed-use development in Smyrna and a residential build in Sandy Springs that had stalled. Combined outstanding debt on both, substantial. Voss had been circling refinancing options for the better part of a year, trying to find collateral that would satisfy a lender. The two Fontaine Voss LLC properties were that collateral, or they were supposed to be. The problem, according to Marcus's sourced notes from a real estate contact familiar with the appraisals, was that both properties had come in significantly below what Derek and Vanessa needed. The East Atlanta parcel had appreciated, but not enough. The Douglasville property had soft comps and a drainage issue that the appraiser flagged. Together, the numbers did not work for the refinancing deal Derek needed, not even close. Without the refinancing, Voss Group's two defaulted projects would likely cascade, and Derek Voss, facing that collapse, would need solutions that Vanessa could not provide. Grayson set the report down. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. Numerous calls. He had been turning it over since the day the call log appeared on his phone. Why she needs to, not what she wants. And now, the picture was complete. Vanessa was not calling because she missed him. She was not calling because she felt guilty. She was calling because her attorney had almost certainly told her something she did not want to hear, that a window existed in the divorce decree for either party to contest asset division if fraud evidence emerged. A clean legal release signed by Grayson would close that window permanently. She was counting on him not knowing about the LLC. She had called repeatedly because she needed one signature. Grayson thought about that for a moment. About a woman who had spent years calculating every move, who had restructured accounts and formed shell companies and positioned assets well in advance, now sitting somewhere across Atlanta, dialing his number over and over because her plan had developed a crack she had not engineered for. He did not feel triumphant. Not yet. He picked up his phone and called Elena Vargas. "File it," he said. "Today," Elena said. It was not a question. "Today," Grayson confirmed. He heard the sound of a keyboard. "Done by this afternoon," she said, and the call ended. He did not contact Vanessa directly. That was important. Everything that touched Vanessa from this point forward went through counsel, through Nadia, through the formal architecture of process. Nothing personal, nothing that could be read as anything other than procedural. He was not operating from emotion. He was operating from documentation. That afternoon, he asked Nadia to reach out to Vanessa's attorney's office. The message was brief and deliberately neutral. Grayson Holt was open to a brief conversation. One location, a private conference room at Elena Vargas's law firm in Buckhead. One date, weeks out. "She will think she is walking into a negotiation," Nadia said, reviewing the message before she sent it. "I know," Grayson said. "She is going to come in expecting to hand you something." "I know that too." Nadia sent the message. They had a response within the hour. Vanessa agreed immediately. That evening, Grayson drove to Vivian's house in College Park. She had cooked baked chicken, rice, green beans with the smoked turkey neck she had been making since he was a boy. The kitchen smelled like every meal he had ever come home to. He sat at the same table where he had done homework years earlier. They ate. Vivian asked about the office, asked about Vance's contracting work, refilled his sweet tea without being asked. She did not ask about Vanessa. She did not ask about the legal case or Derek Voss or any of it. After a while, Grayson set down his fork. "In a short time," he said, "it ends." Vivian nodded. She picked up her own glass, held it with both hands, and looked at him the way she had always looked at him, like she was reading something the rest of the world could not see on his face. "I know what you have built," she said. "I know every step it cost you." She paused. "And I know you slept in that car. Do not look at me like that. Vance talks." Grayson looked at the table. "You did not call me once to complain," she said. "Not once. You just put your head down and built something real." She reached across and refilled his tea again, even though it did not need it. "So, I am going to tell you something you do not need to hear, but I am going to say it anyway." He waited. "Whatever happens soon, you already have my blessing. You have had it since the night you slept in that parking lot and did not quit." Grayson was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, ma'am," he said. They finished dinner. He washed the dishes over her protest, dried them, and put them back exactly where they belonged. He hugged her at the door, held on a second longer than usual, and then walked to his car. He pulled up in front of his house later. "Oh, sorry." He put the car in park but did not get out right away. It was a good house, modest from the street, brick front, clean landscaping, a porch light he had replaced himself because the old one flickered. Nothing like the 4-bedroom in southwest Atlanta that he had rebuilt with his own hands and lost in a courtroom that smelled like carpet cleaner. This house had never belonged to anyone but him. Every payment was his. Every repair was his. The deed had one name on it. He sat in the quiet for a moment. The engine ticked as it cooled. Then he got out, walked up the front path, and went inside. Grayson arrived early that morning. The elevator opened onto the upper floor, and he walked the length of the hallway without hurrying. The receptionist at Elena's firm pointed him toward the conference room on the left, and when he pushed open the glass door, Elena and Nadia were already there. Elena sat at the far end of the oval table with a closed leather portfolio in front of her. No coffee, no small talk. She looked up when Grayson entered, gave a short nod, and went back to reviewing something on her phone. Nadia was near the windows, standing with her arms folded loosely, looking out over the Buckhead skyline. The morning light came in flat and bright. Floors below Peachtree Road was already thick with traffic. She confirmed last night, Nadia said without turning around. Her attorney is a man named Gerald Fitch. Decent civil work. Mostly real estate transactions. Not a litigator. Good, Grayson said. He set his leather portfolio on the table and took the chair directly facing the door. He had chosen that seat deliberately. He wanted to be the first thing Vanessa saw when she walked in. He poured himself a glass of water from the pitcher on the table and sat with both hands resting flat on the surface. The room was quiet. The city hummed silently behind the glass. Somewhere down the hall, a printer ran through a job and stopped. They waited. When the door opened, Vanessa walked in first. She was dressed in a charcoal wrap dress, heels, her hair pulled back smooth and clean. She looked the way she always looked when she needed to make an impression, put together in a way that took effort, but was designed to appear effortless. Her posture was steady. Her expression was composed. She carried herself like a woman who had walked into difficult rooms before and come out fine. Her attorney followed, Gerald Fitch, late 50s, a navy suit, the kind of silver-haired presentation that was meant to signal authority before he opened his mouth. Vanessa's eyes moved across the room in one practice sweep. They landed on Grayson. Something passed across her face, not quite surprise, not quite relief, some complicated thing that she controlled almost immediately. Then her eyes moved to Nadia, then to Elena. She did not know Elena's name. Grayson could see that in the half-second pause, the slight recalibration behind her eyes. Elena was sitting at the table in a charcoal blazer with a portfolio and the particular stillness of someone who had been in this kind of room countless times. That stillness, Grayson knew, was its own signal. Vanessa's gaze moved away from Elena's face and back to neutral, but the recalibration had already happened. She sat down across from Grayson. Fitch took the chair beside her, clicked open a briefcase, and began arranging papers. Grayson. Vanessa's voice was warm, careful, the voice she used when she wanted to appear reasonable before she needed something. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Grayson looked at her. He said. Fitch cleared his throat and took the opening. He spoke for some time, smoothly, professionally, outlining a proposition his client was prepared to offer, a revisitation of certain settlement arrangements from the original divorce decree, a goodwill gesture, flexibility on both sides. All Grayson needed to do was sign a comprehensive release of any future claims related to the marriage or marital property. Clean, simple. Everyone moves forward. When Fitch finished, the room was quiet. Grayson did not respond right away. He let the silence sit. He took a slow breath, looked down at the table once, and then reached for the leather portfolio in front of him. He opened it. He removed a single folder and placed it on the table. Then he slid it across the smooth surface toward the center, directly in front of Vanessa and Fitch. He did not say anything yet. Fitch picked up the folder and opened it. The first page was the LLC registration for Fontaine Voss Properties, filed months before the divorce papers arrived at Grayson's door. Behind it, the financial records showing the funding trail from the restructured joint savings account. Behind that, the timeline of the romantic relationship between Vanessa and Derek Voss, sourced and dated, beginning well before the filing. Behind that, a single-page written statement signed by a family member, describing in plain language 2 separate industry events at which Vanessa had described her husband to professional contacts as brilliant, but not leadership material, someone better suited to support roles. And on the very last page, the cover sheet of a civil fraud complaint for fraudulent concealment of marital assets filed in Fulton County days prior. Elena Vargas's name was printed at the bottom as Counsel of Record. Grayson waited until Fitch had turned enough pages to understand what he was holding. Then he spoke. His voice was even. He did not rush. He did not raise it. He spoke without interruption, laying out, in the order it happened, exactly what had been done and when and what it had cost him. The account restructuring, the LLC, the properties that never appeared in discovery, the planning before the papers ever arrived, the promotion that was quietly killed, the business ideas turned to ash by a patient, reasonable voice in the dark, the night he slept in a parking lot behind a Kroger with the modest check in his glove compartment and pages of a business framework on a laptop he had paid for himself. He did not perform any of it. He simply reported it, the way a man reports something that already happened to someone who has not been told yet. "I am not angry at you anymore," he said. "I was, but what I am now is finished." He looked at her directly. "The law is going to handle the rest." He folded his hands and said nothing further. Fitch was still reading. His eyes moved from page to page with the careful, increasingly careful attention of a man doing arithmetic that was not adding up the way he had been told it would. Vanessa sat very still, and something left her face. Not all at once, not dramatically, quietly, the way a light behind a curtain goes out. One moment it was there, that composed, practiced steadiness she had carried into the room. And then, page by page, as Fitch turned through the folder, it simply was not anymore. The civil fraud complaint moved through the courts the way Elena Vargas moved through everything, quietly, precisely, and without mercy. Grayson did not have to do much after the conference room. That was the thing about building something correctly. Once it was standing, it stood on its own. The court issued an asset freeze on the 2 LLC investment properties within weeks of the complaint being filed. Hundreds of thousands in real estate, locked, untouchable. Derek Voss had been counting on those properties as refinancing collateral for 2 over-leveraged development projects that were already bleeding. Without them, he had nothing to present to his lenders, nothing to restructure around, nothing to hold the weight of what he had built on promises and projections, and a woman who had assured him the numbers were clean. They were not clean. The first development went into formal default weeks after the freeze. The second followed shortly after that. Vanessa's firm placed her on administrative leave the same week the complaint became a matter of public record. A paralegal handling real estate transactions could not remain active while under civil litigation for real estate fraud, not at a firm with a reputation to protect, not in Georgia, not anywhere. The administrative leave lasted weeks. Then it became a termination. Grayson learned this from Marcus, who had kept a loose thread of contact open and passed information along without editorializing. Just facts, clean and flat. Derek ended the relationship somewhere in the middle of all of it. Grayson never learned the exact timing and did not try to find out. It did not matter. 2 people who had built something on calculation had simply presented each other with the final bill. Vanessa reached out through her attorney requesting a brief, off-the-record meeting. No lawyers present. A coffee shop in their old neighborhood on the west side, a place they had gone together sometimes on Saturday mornings a long time ago. Grayson agreed. He brought Nadia. The coffee shop was small and warm, the kind of place with exposed brick and handwritten specials on a chalkboard. Grayson and Nadia were already seated when Vanessa arrived. She looked different than she had in the conference room, less assembled, like something she had been holding together for a long time had gotten heavier since the last time he had seen her. She sat down. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, and then she talked. She said she had made mistakes. She said she had been scared. Scared of how capable Grayson was. Scared of what that meant for her. Scared of being left behind by a man who might one day outgrow her. She said that in some way, the pressure she put on him had come from knowing, somewhere deep down, that he was capable of exactly this. She gestured vaguely at what this meant. The Forbes cover, the company, the conference room, all of it. She said that maybe, in her own way, she had pushed him toward it. She let that sit in the air between them. Grayson listened to every word. He did not interrupt. He did not shift in his chair. He let her finish the whole thing, right to the end. And then he let a moment of quiet pass before he said anything at all. "You did not call me repeatedly because you missed me," he said. His voice was the same as it had been in the conference room. Level, unhurried, impossible to rattle. "You called because you needed something. You have always only ever needed something from me. He looked at her steadily. "The difference now is that I have nothing left that belongs to you." Vanessa held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked down at her cup. "The court will handle the rest," Grayson said. He stood. Nadia stood beside him. He did not look back on his way out the door. The civil case settled months later, a substantial amount, structured, paid out over time in a legal agreement that would follow Vanessa Fontaine's credit history for years. Elena Vargas called Grayson when the final papers were signed. She said, "Done." He said, "Thank you." That was the whole conversation. Derek Voss's firm filed for bankruptcy months after the asset freeze. Marcus sent a one-line message. Grayson read it, set his phone down, and went back to the term sheet he was reviewing. Vance's contracting firm won its first commercial bid, a subcontracting role on a ForgePath office build-out that Grayson had quietly made sure came Vance's way. Vance called him when he found out. He did not say much. Neither did Grayson. They did not need to. Months after the conference room, ForgePath Solutions closed a significant funding round. The day the announcement ran, Grayson sat in his office on an upper floor of a building in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward. Employees beyond the glass wall behind him, a waiting list of carrier clients, a company that had started as 2 words on a blank document in a parking lot late at night. Nadia sat across from his desk with the term sheet, reviewing the final language one last time. She looked up. "How do you feel?" she asked. Grayson considered the question the way he considered most things, honestly, without rushing it. "Like I have been building this house for years, yeah," he said. "And I just moved in." Nadia smiled. "It is a good house." "Yes, it is," Grayson said. He turned toward the window. The Atlanta skyline stretched out below him, bright and wide in the morning light. "It is." He stood there quietly. And somewhere beneath all of it, beneath the term sheet and the funding and the employees and the carrier contracts, he thought of a parking lot on Cascade Road, orange light through a car window, a laptop open on his chest in the dark, 2 words at the top of a blank page. He had never needed anyone to see him clearly. He just needed enough time to see himself. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you do not miss the next story. I have picked out 2 more for you that I think you will really like.